Welcome to the Untold Affairs. Before we dive into today's story, we have a humble request. Please consider subscribing to this new channel. Help us hit our first milestone of 1,000 subscribers. Your support will motivate us to keep bringing you more exclusive original cheating wife stories. And now let's get started with today's story. In Riverview Town, USA, where every street shines with dazzling lights, fast-paced cars zoom by, and busy people rush toward their destinations, everyone dreams of achieving something big. Amidst these bustling faces lived the world of Jack and Angela Miller. Jack, a 35-year-old software manager, was a calm and honest man. His eyes reflected sincerity, and his heart was filled with love for Angela. On the other hand, Angela, a 30-year-old beautiful, confident, and ambitious woman, could charm anyone with her grace and intelligence. She was a senior executive at a major multinational company called Global Nexus Corporation. They had been married for 5 years, and to the outside world their relationship seemed perfect. But in reality, an unspoken void was slowly taking its place between them. Jack was so caught up in his job and household responsibilities that he couldn't give Angela the romance and attention she longed for. Angela, who was used to daily compliments and admiring glances at the office, now felt suffocated by the quiet and simple atmosphere at home. The office world. Global Nexus Corp was a huge company where everyone was struggling to make a name for themselves. Angela's boss, Ryan Carter, was a 35-year-old man with an attractive and charismatic personality. His hair was always neatly styled, his eyes had a peculiar sparkle, and his smile held such charm that no one could refuse him. He was always brimming with confidence and made every effort to get closer to Angela. Angela, too, couldn't ignore Ryan's self-assurance and charm. In the early days, Ryan and Angela's conversations were limited to work, but gradually these conversations extended to jokes, compliments, and personal questions. Ryan would praise Angela in every meeting, pat her back after every presentation, and occasionally invite her to dinner. Angela started enjoying all of this. The home environment. Every evening when Angela returned home, Jack would smile upon seeing her. Jack often cooked in the kitchen and prepared Angela's favorite dish. But Angela no longer carried the same smile on her face. She often remained distant from Jack and was engrossed in her phone. Jack sensed something was off, but he never doubted Angela. The first turning point. One day a big party was organized at the office. All employees were invited to this party. Angela wore a stunning black dress which enhanced her charm even more. During the party, the conversations and closeness between Ryan and Angela grew. Under the influence of alcohol, Ryan held Angela's hand and took her to a secluded spot. "You really are special, Angela," Ryan said, looking into her eyes. Angela lowered her gaze. Her heart was in turmoil. That night, Angela stayed late at the office. She called Jack and said the meeting would run late and that she would stay at the guest house. Jack replied with trust, "No problem, Angela. Take care of yourself. I'll wait for you." The internal struggle. That night, Angela stayed at the office guest house with Ryan. A line was crossed between them that perhaps should never have been crossed. The next morning, when Angela woke up, a flood of guilt overwhelmed her. She looked at herself in the mirror and couldn't stop her tears. When she returned home, Jack smiled and hugged her, saying, "You look so tired. Come on, I'll make your favorite breakfast today." Angela looked into his eyes, but all she could see was love and trust. She composed herself and tried to act normal. The beginning of suspicion. Over time, the distance between Angela and Ryan started to fade. They often had lunch together, talked late into the night, and grew closer under the guise of office work. Jack, who was always perceptive and sensitive, began noticing these changes. "Is everything okay, Angela?" Jack asked one night. "Yes, Jack. There's just a lot of pressure at work," Angela replied. But a faint suspicion had started growing in Jack's heart. Time passed, but Angela's guilt didn't allow her to live in peace. Every morning she would look at herself in the mirror and avoid her own reflection. Jack continued to try to make every day better for her with his love and innocence, but Angela's mind was now deeply occupied by Ryan's presence. The closeness between Ryan and Angela was no longer hidden from anyone. Their meetings had crossed all boundaries, and they couldn't spend even a moment without each other. Ryan had convinced Angela that he was incomplete without her, and Angela had completely fallen for his words. Jack, who had always blindly trusted Angela, slowly started noticing the cracks. Angela's late returns, hushed phone calls, and irritability over small things, these were all signs that something was wrong. But Jack had no proof. He hesitated to say anything based only on his suspicions. He thought maybe he was overthinking. But the tiny seed of doubt that had sprouted in his heart was now growing into a tree. One evening, when Angela returned home from work, Jack planned a surprise dinner for her. He decorated the table with candles, filled the house with flowers, and prepared her favorite dish. But Angela's face didn't light up with the joy Jack hoped to see. Her eyes were lost somewhere else. Jack gently held her hand and said, "Is everything okay, Angela? You don't seem like yourself. Am I not making you happy?" Angela, startled, pulled her hand away and said, "Jack, I'm really tired. I can't talk tonight." Jack's heart broke, but he said nothing. The next day, Angela made an excuse to meet Ryan outside the office. Ryan was already waiting for her. They planned to meet at a hotel. That evening, Jack noticed a notification on Angela's phone mentioning the hotel's name and time. Jack's heart pounded. He quickly grabbed his coat and headed to the hotel. Upon arriving, he waited in the lobby. A little while later, he saw Angela and Ryan walk in, laughing together. Jack's world shattered. Tears welled up in his eyes, but he composed himself. He decided not to confront her then and quietly left. That night, Jack stayed awake, haunted by the image of Angela and Ryan's smiling faces. The next morning, when Angela returned home, Jack didn't ask her anything. He simply said, "Angela, are you happy with me? If you don't need me anymore, you can tell me." Angela stared at him and said, "Why are you saying this, Jack? I haven't done anything wrong. Are you doubting me?" Jack sighed and said, "I never doubted you, but my eyes can't unsee what they've seen." Angela's face turned pale. She quickly grabbed her bag and left for the office. Upon reaching, she went straight to Ryan and said tearfully, "We have to end this. Jack knows everything. I can't lose him." Ryan replied coldly, "Can you really leave me, Angela? Can you forget everything that happened between us?" Angela had no answer. She knew she was trapped in a web she couldn't easily escape. Meanwhile, Jack made a tough decision. He decided to give Angela some space and left to stay with his parents for a few days. Jack's mother, who loved Angela like her daughter, sensed the growing distance between them. She asked Angela, "Dear, is everything okay? Things seem different between you two." Angela's eyes filled with tears, but she composed herself and said, "Everything's fine, Mom. It's just work pressure." In the meantime, Ryan started pressuring Angela. He wanted her to leave Jack and start a new life with him. But Angela's guilt stopped her from taking that step. She didn't know what to do. One night, Jack came home and saw Angela sitting alone. Her face showed exhaustion and sadness. Jack walked up to her and said, "Angela, if there's something you want to tell me, I'm here to listen. I just want to know the truth." Angela's lips trembled. Tears began to flow from her eyes, but she said nothing. Jack softly said, "I'm giving you time, but remember, time doesn't heal every wound. Some wounds only grow deeper." That night they slept apart. The room was silent, and the distance between them now felt miles long. The story had reached a point where every step was testing their relationship. Angela now stood at a crossroads. On one side was Ryan, who was showing her dreams of a new life, and on the other side was Jack, who was making one final attempt to hold on to his broken love. Angela spent the night trying to sleep, but Jack's words kept echoing in her soul. The silence of the room rang like noise in her ears. She looked at herself in the mirror. where the dark circles under her eyes and the exhaustion on her face were clearly visible. She knew her steps had brought her to a path where returning would not be easy. The next day, before leaving for work, Angela looked at Jack. Jack was sitting at the breakfast table, lost in his coffee. There was a quiet sadness on his face, as if he had lost the ability to feel anything. Angela wanted to go to him, apologize, and hug him, but her feet felt shackled. She quietly opened the door and left for the office. At the office, Ryan was waiting for her. He stood up from his chair, held Angela's hand, and took her to the conference room. "Are you okay?" Ryan asked softly. Angela pulled her hand away and said, "We have to end this, Ryan. I can't live this lie anymore." Ryan smirked and said, "Do you think it'll end so easily? Can you erase the time we've spent together?" Angela's eyes welled with tears. She knew Ryan was right. The more she tried to escape this relationship, the more entangled she became. Meanwhile, Jack had taken the day off from work and was sitting alone in a city park. In his hands were some old photos of Angela and himself. In the photos, both of them were smiling, their eyes reflecting love. Tears began to fall from Jack's eyes. The same question kept running through his mind. Where did things go wrong? He had always loved Angela, cared for her. So why did cracks form in their relationship? That evening, Angela returned home from the office. Jack wasn't there. A note was left on the table. "I'm going out of town for a few days. Take care of yourself, Angela. We both need some space." Angela read the note, and tears streamed down her face. She sat on the sofa, buried her head in her knees, and cried. Her mind was flooded with countless questions. She picked up her phone and called Ryan, but the call went unanswered. Angela realized she was alone. To Ryan, Angela was now just another name, another story that had ended. The next day at the office, Angela saw Ryan flirting with another female colleague. Something inside her shattered. She realized she had been nothing more than a pawn in Ryan's game, used for his selfish purposes. Angela's eyes filled with anger and pain. She walked straight into Ryan's office and said, "I'll never forgive you for what you've done to me. You've ruined my life." Ryan laughed and said, "Oh dear. You ruined your own life. I just took advantage of the opportunities you gave me." Angela's heart was broken. She rushed out of the office and went straight to a church. Sitting there, she surrendered herself to God for the first time. She admitted her mistakes and tearfully asked for forgiveness. That night, she called Jack, but his phone was switched off. For the next few days, Jack didn't return home. Angela took leave from work and spent time alone at home. Every corner, every wall, every picture reminded her of Jack. She decided she would now try to fix her life. She cut ties with Ryan, submitted a transfer request at the office, and began working on improving herself. A few weeks later, Jack returned home. As he opened the door, he saw that the house was clean, and Angela was standing in the kitchen, cooking his favorite dish. Jack walked inside slowly. Angela looked at him, and tears welled up in her eyes. "Jack, I know what I did is unforgivable. But if there's even a little love left in your heart for me, please give me one chance. I'll do everything I can to fix myself and our relationship." Jack said nothing. He looked into Angela's eyes, where regret and honesty were both visible. He gently took Angela's hand and said, "I don't know if we can ever make this relationship what it once was, but I'm willing to try." That night they ate dinner under the same roof, but the distance between them remained. Angela knew that broken trust is not easily repaired. She knew the journey ahead would be long and difficult, but she promised herself she wouldn't give up. Time passed. Angela took on new responsibilities at the office and completely distanced herself from Ryan. Ryan, too, started ignoring her entirely, as if she didn't exist. The office gossip slowly died down, but Ryan's face still lingered in Angela's mind like a shadow. Jack and Angela's life was now walking a tightrope where maintaining balance had become incredibly difficult. One day, Jack had to leave town for a few days for work. After he left, Angela was alone at home. The emptiness made her restless. She spent sleepless nights, haunted by memories of the past. Without Jack, she felt even lonelier. She decided to spend some time with her friend Amy to distract herself. Amy, an old friend of Angela's, took her to a party. Amidst loud music, colorful lights, and people laughing and chatting, Angela felt slightly lighter. She had a few drinks and tried to forget everything that had happened between her and Jack, but as soon as she lifted her eyes, she saw Ryan there. Ryan, still in his usual demeanor, was busy getting close to another female employee. Angela's face turned pale. Ryan also spotted Angela and walked towards her with a smile. "Oh, Angela, you here? You usually stay away from these parties," Ryan teased. Angela took a deep breath and said, "I'm here with a friend, and I want you to stay away from me." Ryan took another step closer and said softly, "Can you really stay away from me, Angela? Tell me honestly, doesn't your heart still remember me?" Angela nearly dropped her glass but managed to steady herself and tried to walk away. Ryan grabbed her hand. "You're not going anywhere, Angela. You can't just erase what happened between us so easily." Angela pulled her hand away and said, "It was a mistake, Ryan, and I don't want to repeat that mistake." But there was a different fire burning in Ryan's eyes. In a threatening tone, he said, "If you keep your distance from me, I'll tell Jack everything. I'll expose everything, Angela. Your and Jack's life will be ruined." Angela's heart started racing. Her breathing became uneven. She ran out of the party into the cold night air, trying to collect herself. Tears streamed down her face. She didn't know what to do. Ryan's face kept flashing before her eyes, and his threat echoed in her ears. The next morning, Angela called Jack. Her voice was trembling. "Jack, when will you be back?" Jack replied, "Just 2 more days, Angela." "Is everything okay?" Angela's voice wavered as she said, "Yes, everything's fine. Just come home soon." By the time Jack returned, Angela's mental state had deteriorated significantly. She kept watching every door, every window, as if Ryan could appear at any moment. When Jack came home, he found Angela looking scared and broken. Jack hugged her and said, "What happened, Angela?" "Why are you so worried?" Angela broke down in tears. She was ready to tell him everything. "Jack, I have something to tell you." But just then, Jack's phone rang. It was an urgent call from the office, and he had to respond immediately. Angela left her words hanging in the air. That night, Angela messaged Ryan, "I'll do whatever you want. Just leave Jack out of this." Ryan replied, "Then meet me tomorrow evening at Hotel Blue Moon." Angela's heart started pounding. She thought that if she could meet Ryan and end this once and for all, maybe she could rebuild her life with Jack. But she had no idea that this meeting could change her and Jack's relationship forever. The next day, Jack noticed Angela's strange behavior. She was quiet and distant. Jack hugged her and said, "Angela, whatever it is, I'm here for you. Just don't hide the truth from me." But Angela said nothing. By evening, Angela picked up her bag and headed to Hotel Blue Moon. But Jack sensed that something was wrong. Quietly, he got into his car and followed her. When his car stopped outside Hotel Blue Moon, Jack's heart was racing. He stepped out of his car and walked into the hotel. What happened inside was a mystery that would determine the fate of their relationship. Amidst the shining lights and calm ambiance of Hotel Blue Moon, Angela's car slowly pulled into the parking area. Her breaths were sharp and her hands trembled on the steering wheel. She looked at herself in the mirror. Her eyes reflected fear, guilt, and anxiety. She took a deep breath, steadied herself, and stepped out of the car. The hotel lobby was nearly empty, and a female receptionist greeted Angela with a smile. "Ma'am, may I help you?" the receptionist asked. Angela nodded slightly and said, "I'm here to see Mr. Ryan Carter." The receptionist made a phone call and then said, "You'll need to go to the 3rd floor, room number 306. Angela pressed the elevator button, and as it ascended, her heart pounded louder with each passing second. At the door of room 306, she knocked gently. The door opened, and Ryan stood there, with that same confident smile, the same predatory glint in his eyes. "Come in, Angela. I've been waiting for you." He opened the door wider, and Angela hesitantly stepped inside. The room was dimly lit. A bottle of wine sat on the table, and soft music played in the background. "What do you want from me, Ryan?" Angela asked in a trembling voice. Ryan stared into her eyes and said, "I want you back, Angela. I want us to relive those moments we had together. Your husband can never give you what I can." Angela said angrily, "This is over, Ryan. You can't blackmail me. I'm only here so you'll leave Jack alone. Your threats won't work on me anymore." Ryan laughed. His laughter echoed in the room. In the elevator, silence hung heavily between them. The wounds from that night lingered in the unspoken words. On the drive home, Jack said nothing. The car was filled with silence. Angela kept glancing at him, but Jack's face was emotionless. When they reached home, Jack walked in and sat down on the couch. "You've hurt me deeply, Angela. Every day I convinced myself that maybe I wasn't enough for you. But the truth is, you made your choice." Angela knelt in front of him, tears streaming down her face. "What I did is unforgivable, Jack. But I love you. I made a mistake. But I want to make it right. Please give me one chance." Jack looked at her, his eyes filled with tears. "I need time, Angela. I need to heal from this pain. But I don't know if I'll ever forget it." That night they slept in separate rooms. The walls between them were more than just physical. They were emotional. Angela couldn't sleep, and Jack's heart felt shattered. The next morning, Jack left a note for Angela. "I need some time alone. Don't look for me." Angela read the note and tried to hold herself together. Jack was gone, and she was alone once again. Ryan's shadow still lingered in her mind. But this loneliness, this punishment, was perhaps the price she had to pay for her mistakes. The story had reached a turning point, where each character stood at a crossroads, one that could change their future forever. After Jack left home, every day became a punishment for Angela. The walls of the house, every corner, every picture reminded her of Jack. Without him, the house felt like an empty palace. Angela had accepted her mistake, but now she faced the silence that tore her apart from within every single day. She would wake up in the morning, try to bury herself in work, but Jack's absence would pierce her heart every time. She tried calling Jack many times, but his phone was always switched off. On the other hand, Jack was staying in a small beachside town in a guest house. The sound of ocean waves and the vast blue sky couldn't calm the storm raging in his heart. Every night he would remember the moments he had shared with Angela, but as soon as Ryan's face intruded on his thoughts, anger and sorrow would consume him. A battle raged within Jack. On one side was his love, urging him to forgive Angela, and on the other side was his self-respect, repeatedly telling him to walk away from the relationship. Meanwhile, things worsened for Angela at the office. Ryan, who had been blackmailing her, had now begun openly humiliating her. He would interrupt her in meetings, exaggerate her smallest mistakes, and make her feel ashamed in front of everyone. Angela started feeling unsafe at her workplace. One evening, when the office was nearly empty, Ryan called Angela into his cabin. "You're still trying to run away from me, Angela, but I won't let you go so easily. What happened between us wasn't just a game." Angela, trembling, said, "Ryan, if you keep harassing me, I'll go to the police." Ryan laughed and said, "Oh, the police? And what will you tell them? That you came to me willingly? I have evidence against you, messages, recordings. You can't escape me." Angela rushed out of the cabin and drove straight home. She was broken. For the first time, she told her friend Amy everything. Amy advised her to take action against Ryan. "Don't wait any longer, Angela. The more you fear him, the more power he'll have over you." The next day, Angela gathered all her courage and filed a complaint against Ryan. The police began their investigation immediately, but Ryan had enough fake evidence to defend himself. He convinced the company board that Angela was trying to frame him. The company suspended Angela temporarily. Angela had nothing left now, neither Jack, nor her job, nor her confidence. She sat in a corner of her home, crying. But that night, Jack received an email. From an anonymous ID, he was sent a recording of conversations between Ryan and Angela. It was clear from the recording that Ryan had blackmailed Angela and trapped her in his schemes. Jack's blood boiled. He immediately got into his car and drove back to the city. When he opened the door to the house, he saw Angela sitting on the floor, tears streaming down her face, trembling. Jack gently placed a hand on her shoulder. Angela looked up at him and broke into uncontrollable sobs. "Jack, I'm so tired. I admitted my mistake, but this man will destroy me." Jack took a deep breath and said, "You lied to me, Angela. You betrayed me, but I know now what Ryan did to you. This ends now." The next day, Jack and Angela both went to the police station. They handed over the recording to the police. Ryan was immediately arrested. The company also learned the truth and fired Ryan. But the story didn't end there. Ryan was in jail, but he played one last card. He sent a threatening letter to Jack. "This story isn't over, Jack. I'll be back, and you'll both pay a heavy price." Jack and Angela read the letter and looked at each other. Jack held Angela's hand and said, "We can't leave each other now. We'll fight this together." But the letter sparked a new unease. Jack and Angela remained on high alert. They installed cameras around their home and increased their security. But deep down, both of them carried the fear that Ryan's shadow was still looming over them. A few days later, Jack made a proposal to Angela. "Why don't we leave this city and start fresh somewhere else?" Angela looked into his eyes and said, "I'll go anywhere with you, Jack, as long as we're together." But one night, the glass window of their house shattered. Jack looked outside but saw nothing. Inside the house, a letter lay on the floor. "I'm back. The game is about to begin." The note lying on the floor sent shivers down Jack and Angela's spines. The words, "I'm back. The game is about to begin," echoed off the walls of the room. Jack peeked out of the window, but there was nothing visible in the darkness. Angela's face had turned pale. Her breaths were quick, and her hands trembled. Jack immediately called the police, but by the time they arrived, there was no sign of any intruder. That night, neither of them could sleep. Jack's mind kept replaying Ryan's face over and over. How can this man be in jail if this letter reached here? Jack questioned himself. Angela, terrified, said, "Jack, if he's really set on hurting us, we're not safe anywhere." Jack held her hand tightly and said, "I won't let anything happen to you, Angela, no matter what." The next few days were filled with paranoia. Every knock on the door, every shadow, and every creak in the house felt threatening. Jack began working from home to keep an eye on Angela. They considered moving away, but every time they packed a bag, fear crept in. One evening, Jack received another anonymous email. It contained a blurry photo of Angela standing in their living room. The caption below read, "I'm watching you." Angela froze when Jack showed her the email. Their sense of security was shattered. Jack increased the home security again, but they both realized that Ryan, or whoever was behind this, was always one step ahead. Jack and Angela were now living in constant fear. The game had truly begun. And this time their enemy was invisible, unpredictable, and deadly. The letter lying on the floor sent shivers down Jack and Angela's spines. The words, "I'm back. The game is about to begin," seemed to echo off the walls of the room. Jack peered out the window, but there was nothing but darkness. Angela's face had turned pale, her breaths were sharp, and her hands trembled. Jack immediately called the police, but by the time they arrived, there was no trace of anyone. That night, neither of them could sleep for a single moment. Jack's mind kept replaying Ryan's face over and over again. "How can this man still be in jail if this letter reached us here?" Jack questioned himself. Angela, trembling, said, "Jack, if he's really determined to hurt us, we're not safe anywhere." Jack held her hand tightly and said, "I won't let anything happen to you, Angela, no matter what." The next day, Jack went to the police station to get updates on Ryan's status. There, he learned that Ryan had been transferred to another prison, but during the transfer, he managed to escape by outsmarting the officers. Jack's heart began to race. "So he's free now, and he's coming after us," Jack muttered under his breath. The police assured him they were searching for Ryan, but Jack knew it was just protocol. Jack decided to get Angela out of the city to keep her safe. They temporarily locked up their house and took refuge in a small lodge located in a remote hillside area. The lodge was on the edge of a forest, far from easy access. Both of them thought they would be safe here for some time, but the shadow of fear followed them all the way there. On the third night, when the lodge was cloaked in dense darkness and the cold wind was tapping against the windows, there was suddenly a faint knock on the door. Jack gestured to Angela to stay quiet and slowly approached the door. He peeked outside, but there was no one there. Just then, Angela's scream echoed from behind. Jack rushed back into the room and saw a rock lying near the window with another letter tied to it. "You can run, but you can't hide. I'm close." Jack tried to control his anger, but his fists were clenched tight. "Enough is enough," he said. The next day, Jack called a local police officer to the lodge. The officer inspected the area but found nothing. "There's no one here, sir. Maybe it's just your imagination," the officer said. But Jack knew this wasn't his imagination. That night, while Angela was asleep, Jack stood guard outside the lodge. The rustling of the forest, the darkness, and the occasional animal sounds made the atmosphere even more terrifying. Suddenly, Jack noticed some movement behind the trees. He slowly moved in that direction, but there was nothing there. Out of nowhere, someone pressed a knife against his neck from behind. "Mr. Jack, we finally meet," Ryan's cold voice pierced Jack's ears. Jack turned slowly and saw Ryan staring into his eyes. His face, partially illuminated by the faint moonlight, looked terrifying. "You think you can escape me? I had your wife, Jack. And now I'll destroy you too." But Jack suddenly punched Ryan's hand hard, causing the knife to fall to the ground. A brutal fight broke out between them. Punches, kicks, and the sound of bodies hitting the ground echoed through the forest. Ryan overpowered Jack and slammed him to the ground, grabbing the knife again and lunging toward him. Just then, Angela appeared from behind and struck Ryan's head with a wooden stick. Ryan collapsed to the ground unconscious. Jack immediately called the police. Ryan was arrested on the spot and sent this time to a high-security prison. Jack and Angela finally breathed a sigh of relief. But the story wasn't over yet. A few months later, Jack and Angela tried to rebuild their lives. They redecorated their home, spent time repairing their relationship, and slowly things began to get better. But one day, Jack received a text message from an unknown number. "Do you really think this is over? I'll be back." The glow of the mobile screen reflected on Jack's face, and the words, "Do you really think this is over? I'll be back," cut through his chest like a cold dagger. Angela, who was making tea in the kitchen, noticed the fear etched on Jack's face and immediately walked over to him. "What happened, Jack? You look so scared." Jack slowly handed the phone to Angela. She glanced at the screen, and her cup nearly slipped from her hand. How is this possible? Ryan is in prison, Jack. Jack immediately called the police, but the response was the same. Ryan is in prison, and escaping from there is impossible. This must be a prank. But Jack knew this wasn't a prank. The danger was real. For the next few days, both of them remained extremely cautious. Every window and door was locked tightly, and they stayed alert whenever they stepped outside. Jack installed a tracking app on Angela's phone to ensure he could always know her location. But one day, while Angela was driving back from the supermarket, her car brakes failed. The car spun out of control on the road and narrowly came to a halt after crashing into a tree. Angela's breathing was rapid and terror filled her eyes. When Jack learned about the accident, he rushed to the hospital immediately. Angela was fine, but it was clear this wasn't an accident. This was Ryan's doing, Jack. I'm sure of it. He's watching us somehow. That night, Jack decided he would find the truth about Ryan himself. He arranged a meeting with prison authorities. Upon arriving at the prison, he saw Ryan with his own eyes, sitting behind the bars. Ryan was smirking. "Oh, Jack, why are you here? Did you miss me?" Ryan's face was calm, but his eyes still held that familiar cruelty. "Did you send that message? And what happened to Angela's car? Was that you?" Jack asked furiously. Ryan gently touched the prison bars with his finger and whispered, "I'm behind these bars, Jack. But that doesn't mean I'm powerless. I have friends. Friends who do my bidding on the outside. You two will never be safe." Jack's heart began to race. He immediately informed the police about everything, but Ryan's claims were dismissed due to a lack of evidence. Jack and Angela decided they would move to a safer place. They left the city and settled in a small town. They rented a quiet house where they tried to start fresh. But peace was not meant for them. One night, while Jack was sitting on the couch and Angela was in the kitchen preparing something, the power suddenly went out. Darkness filled the house. Jack grabbed his flashlight and stepped outside. There was no sign of a blown transformer. Then he heard movement behind the house. He cautiously stepped in that direction. In the darkness, he could hear faint footsteps. Jack shone his flashlight, but there was no one there. Suddenly, Angela's scream echoed from inside. Jack ran back into the house like a madman. He saw the window shattered, and on the floor lay a note. "I'm very close, Jack." Jack's face turned pale. Angela clung to his chest, trembling. He was here, Jack. I saw someone outside the window." Over the next few days, Jack installed CCTV cameras around the house and tightened security measures. But their fear wasn't over yet. One day, Jack received a call from an unknown number. "Hello, Jack. Did you think you could escape me? I'm watching every window, every door of your house. And yes, Angela, she looks beautiful in that blue dress." The call ended. Jack lowered the phone and looked across the room. Angela stood there wearing the exact blue dress described in the call. Sweat formed on Jack's forehead. "We have to leave, Angela, right now." They packed their bags immediately and drove away in their car. But as they hit the highway, a black van began tailing them. Jack sped up, but the van got closer and closer. Suddenly, someone from the van started firing at their car. Jack swerved the vehicle and turned onto a dark forest road. There, among the trees, their car got stuck. Jack and Angela quickly jumped out and began running into the dark forest. Behind them, the sound of footsteps and snapping twigs echoed. "Jack, they're behind us!" Angela gasped. Eventually, they stumbled upon an old, dilapidated house. Jack bolted the door from the inside, and both of them sat quietly, holding their breath. Outside, footsteps could be heard. A red light crept under the door. Someone knocked on the door. "Knock, knock, Jack, I'm here." The room fell silent. Angela's eyes widened with fear. Jack slowly pulled a knife from his pocket. The knocking continued. The continuous knocking on the door and the cold, chilling voice from outside deepened the silence inside the room. Jack tightened his grip on the knife while Angela's face turned pale with fear. "Jack, he's here," she whispered. Jack gestured for her to stay quiet. Both of them held their breath. The knocking suddenly stopped, and after a few moments, everything went silent. It felt as if time had frozen. Jack slowly crept towards the window and peeked outside. It was pitch dark with faint rain falling. There was no sign of anyone. But then they heard it, a faint sound like someone walking on the roof above them. Jack and Angela exchanged a terrified glance. "He's on the roof," Jack whispered. Suddenly a piece of plaster fell from the corner of the ceiling and a faint red light shone through. Jack immediately grabbed Angela's hand, and they ran towards the back door. The door burst open and both of them sprinted into the rain-soaked forest. Behind them, shadows moved swiftly, and the sound of heavy footsteps followed them. In the dark, only their quick breaths and the snapping of branches could be heard. "Run faster, Angela," Jack whispered urgently. Angela's legs were trembling, but she knew if they were caught, survival would be impossible. Suddenly, Jack pulled Angela down to the ground. Just a few meters away, a man holding a knife walked past them, searching. His eyes glinted with madness. Jack and Angela lay still on the damp ground, holding their breath until the man disappeared into the darkness. After a while, they started running again. Eventually, they stumbled upon an old, decrepit cabin in the middle of the woods. Jack shoved Angela inside and bolted the door shut. The cabin was dark, and the smell of damp wood filled the air. Both of them sat in a corner, panting, as if they had just escaped the jaws of death. Jack. Who were those people? Did Ryan send them? Angela's voice trembled. Jack held her hand and said, "We need to stay quiet. If we panic, they'll find us." The atmosphere inside the cabin was haunting. Scratches were visible on the wooden walls, and cobwebs hung from the corners. Suddenly, their phone buzzed with a notification. Both of them looked at the screen. It read, "Not so easy, Jack. The game isn't over yet. He's tracking us, Jack." Angela's face turned pale with fear. Jack immediately turned off both their phones and removed the batteries. "From here on, we can only rely on our wits to get out." The next morning, with the first rays of sunlight, Jack looked out the window. The forest was quiet, but he knew this calm was just the silence before a storm. "We need to get out of here, Angela, and this time we go straight to the police station." They quietly opened the cabin door and began moving outside, but suddenly 2 men appeared from behind the bushes. They were holding guns. Jack immediately moved Angela behind him. "What do you want?" Jack asked angrily. "We want what our boss ordered, to end both of you," one man said, pointing the barrel of his gun at Jack's face. But just then, the sound of police sirens echoed in the distance. The 2 men panicked and disappeared into the bushes. Police vehicles stopped along the forest path, and several officers stepped out. Jack took a deep breath of relief and hugged Angela. "Everything will be okay now," Jack said softly. But another shock awaited them at the police station. The inspector said, "Jack, we've received news that Ryan has escaped from prison, but those men chasing you were just thugs. Ryan is still out there. We're certain he's hiding somewhere and still targeting you." Jack and Angela were taken to a safe house under government protection, surrounded by heavy security. But a question kept circling in Jack's mind. What will Ryan's next move be? And where is he? In the darkness of night, Jack sat by the window looking out. A light rain was falling. Suddenly he spotted a shadow across the street, a man staring directly at him. His eyes carried the same menace. Jack immediately opened the door and rushed outside, but there was no one there. Back in the room, he woke Angela. "We have to leave. This place isn't safe either. Ryan is close by." The stakes in this game had risen too high. Ryan's presence, his moves, and his plan all pointed towards an impending danger. Jack and Angela realized this was going to be the biggest and most dangerous fight of their lives. The silence in the room was broken only by Jack and Angela's heavy breathing. Even the security of the safe house now felt like an illusion. The shadow Jack had seen outside the window kept haunting his mind. Angela held Jack's hand tightly, fear and insecurity evident in her eyes. "Jack, how long will we keep running?" "He'll find us anywhere." Jack hugged Angela tightly and said, "No, this time we won't run. This time we fight." Jack immediately contacted the local police chief. "We need to take matters into our own hands to stop Ryan. The police system can no longer keep us safe." The police chief, who was well aware of Ryan's brutality, nodded in agreement. "We'll help you, Jack, but it won't be easy. Ryan is extremely cunning. He not only has resources but might also have connections with some police officers." That night, Jack and Angela were taken to a secret hideout. It was an old warehouse fortified for security purposes. The place was desolate, surrounded by CCTV cameras and guards stationed at every corner, but Jack's mind was still restless. "Angela, if Ryan finds his way here, we need to be ready." As the night deepened, some movement was detected outside the warehouse. The guards became alert, gripping their weapons tightly. One guard approached Jack and reported, "Sir, there's some suspicious activity outside. We think someone's here." Jack's heart started pounding. He told Angela to hide in a secure room and stepped outside with a gun in his hand. In the darkness of the forest, a faint red light flickered. Jack slowly pointed his flashlight in that direction, but there was no one there. Suddenly a guard's scream echoed. Jack sprinted towards the sound, but when he arrived, the guard was lying on the ground with a sharp wound across his neck. Jack's breath caught in his throat. "He's here!" Suddenly, gunfire erupted inside the warehouse. Jack rushed back inside. The guards were holding their positions, but the attackers outnumbered them. Jack ducked behind a wall and loaded his gun. The sound of bullets, shattering glass, and frantic screams filled the air with chaos. Angela, hiding inside the secure room, trembled at the loud pounding on the door. "Open the door, Angela. I'm here to get you." It was Ryan's voice, cold, chilling, and terrifying. Angela covered her mouth with her hands to prevent any sound from escaping. Jack managed to take down one attacker and shoved another into a pillar. He was fighting with every ounce of strength he had, but the attackers kept coming. Then Jack spotted Ryan, dressed in black, entering from the far end of the warehouse. He carried a small machine gun, and his face wore that same devilish grin. "Game over, Jack!" Ryan shouted and opened fire. Jack took cover behind a pillar, but a bullet grazed his arm. Wincing in pain, Jack lifted his gun and fired at Ryan. But Ryan was too quick. "Where's Angela, Jack?" "Give her to me and I'll let you live," Ryan said with a mocking laugh. Jack, filled with rage, replied, "You think I'll ever let you near her? You'll have to go through me first." Ryan smirked and took a step back. "All right, Jack. Let's see who finishes whom." Meanwhile, Angela noticed a ventilation duct on the wall inside the secure room. She quickly unscrewed it and crawled inside. Moving carefully through the ventilation pipes, she eventually reached the warehouse roof. Jack and Ryan standing face to face. Jack had his gun aimed at Ryan, and Ryan had his aimed back at Jack. They stared into each other's eyes, both waiting for the other to make a move. Suddenly, Ryan pulled the trigger. Jack ducked just in time, and the bullet whizzed past his head. At that exact moment, Angela picked up a heavy iron pipe from the roof and hurled it with all her strength at Ryan's head. Ryan staggered, losing his balance, and fell to the ground. Jack seized the opportunity, lunged at Ryan, and kicked his gun away. Jack pointed his gun at Ryan's throat and said, "It's over, Ryan." But Ryan, smirking, muttered, "It's not over yet, Jack. You think I'm alone?" The next moment, a loud explosion sounded outside the warehouse. Police cars, helicopters, and additional forces had arrived. Ryan was handcuffed and dragged into a police vehicle. Jack and Angela looked at each other. Their faces bore faint smiles, but their eyes reflected months of fear and exhaustion. Ryan was taken to a high-security prison this time. The game was over. Or perhaps it was just another unfinished chapter. Jack and Angela saw a calming glow in the sky as they returned home for the first time. But somewhere deep inside, a fear still lingered in their hearts. Is this really the end? Or is another storm about to knock on their door? For a few months, silence and peace returned to Jack and Angela's lives. They had moved back into their old home, redecorated every corner, hung old pictures on the walls, and tried to make sure that the shadows of those terrifying days didn't affect their relationship. But the small seeds of fear were still present somewhere in their minds. Angela had quit her old job, and Jack had changed his work routine. They both tried to start fresh and make time for each other, but sometimes in the dead of night, Jack would feel as though someone was standing outside the window watching them. Angela would often wake up in a panic, and at times it felt like they were still trapped in Ryan's web. One day, Jack received a call from an unknown number. He slowly answered the call, and a faint laugh came from the other side. "Hello, Jack. Did you miss me?" Jack almost dropped the phone. It was Ryan's voice. "This is impossible. You're in prison," Jack shouted. But the voice continued. "Do you really think so, Jack? The game is not over, and yes, say hi to Angela for me." The call ended. Jack's face turned pale. He immediately called the police station, but they told him that Ryan was still in high-security prison. "Sir, he hasn't gone anywhere. It must be someone else who's disturbing you." But a seed of doubt had once again been planted in Jack's heart. That evening, Jack and Angela made sure to lock every door and window in their house. Jack checked the CCTV footage, but nothing suspicious was found. But at midnight, when Angela woke up, she saw a faint red light coming from under the door. Her heart started racing. She woke Jack. "Jack, someone's outside." Jack quietly picked up his gun and approached the door. He slowly opened it and saw a package on their porch. A note was attached to the package. "Did you think it was over? The game is still on." Jack opened the package and found a pen drive inside. They immediately plugged the pen drive into their laptop. A video started playing on the screen. In the video, Ryan was sitting in a chair in a dark room, smiling. "Jack, Angela, you both think that by locking me up you're safe? I'll keep following you like your shadow. My network, my people, they're all around you. And yes, a special friend is among you." The video ended. Jack and Angela looked at each other. "A special friend? That means someone around us is working for him," Jack mumbled. The next day, Jack asked his old friend and cybersecurity expert Liam for help. Liam analyzed the video and said, "Jack, this isn't a live video, but it was recorded recently. And the most shocking thing is that it was uploaded from inside the prison." Jack's head started spinning. "So, Ryan is still targeting us from inside prison?" Liam said seriously, "Yes, and it wouldn't have been possible without help from someone inside the prison." Meanwhile, Angela received a call from an old colleague, Kara, from the office. "Angela, I need to meet you. I have something very important to tell you." Angela and Kara met at a nearby cafe. Fear was evident on Kara's face. "Angela, I think someone from Ryan's team is close to you. I overheard some suspicious people talking about you at the office and... Kara paused. "What and, Kara?" Angela asked. "And I think I'm being followed." That same night, Kara's car was involved in an accident. The police report labeled it a simple accident, but Angela and Jack were sure it wasn't just an accident. Jack decided that he would visit Ryan in prison himself. Inside the prison, Ryan was in a special cell, monitored by cameras. As soon as Jack saw Ryan, his blood boiled. "How are you doing all this? Who's helping you?" Ryan smiled and softly replied, "Sometimes the enemy is closer than you think, Jack. So close that you can feel their breath on your neck." Jack glared at Ryan and signaled the guards to take him out. As they stepped outside, Jack thought, could it be a friend? Is it an old office colleague, or could it be someone we blindly trust? Jack and Angela were now on high alert. They began paying attention to every little detail. Every call, every message, and every person seemed suspicious. But the real shock came when Jack received another package. Inside was a picture of Angela, taken as she was walking out of their back door. Beneath the picture were the words, "She's not safe, Jack. Listen to the ticking clock. Time is running out." Jack's skin crawled. They had little time. The enemy was very close, maybe watching their every move. The words on the picture, "She's not safe, Jack. Listen to the ticking clock. Time is running out," sent a deep sense of fear through Jack and Angela. There was an eerie silence in the room, and the ticking of the clock now sounded like explosions. Jack stared at the picture. "This picture was taken last night, when you were in the kitchen. That means someone is right outside our house, watching us." Tears filled Angela's eyes. "Jack, I can't take this anymore. This fear, this hiding, it's driving me insane." Jack hugged Angela. "We have to end this, Angela. This time, either Ryan will survive or we will." Jack immediately called his friend Liam. Liam began going through the footage from all the CCTV cameras in the house. After an hour of reviewing the footage, Liam noticed a suspicious person. In the dark of the night, a man was seen approaching their backyard. His face was not clear in the camera, but it was obvious that he was tracking someone. "This man was trying to come inside, but he probably saw the cameras and turned back," Liam said. Jack looked at the screen and said, "We need to catch him." Liam suggested that they set a trap. "We'll lure him here, but this time we'll be ready." The next night, Jack and Angela made a plan. Angela deliberately posted on her social media account, "We're alone at home tonight. Looks like everything is returning to normal." This post was a trap. Around 2 a.m., Jack and Liam were glued to the CCTV screen. Angela was hiding upstairs. Suddenly, movement appeared on the backyard camera. A dark figure slowly approached the window. Jack and Liam grabbed their guns and silently moved toward the backyard. There was a man standing there, dressed in black with his face covered by a mask. Jack shouted, "Freeze! Hands up!" The man didn't say anything for a moment and then suddenly started running. Jack and Liam chased after him. The man ran into the forest. The darkness in the woods was thick, and every step was accompanied by the crunching of dry leaves. Jack held the flashlight and gun. "Stop! There's no point in running!" Jack shouted. After a while, they saw the man enter an old, abandoned cabin. Jack and Liam slowly opened the door and entered. The sight inside was shocking. Photos of Jack and Angela were pinned to the walls. Some photos had been taken from angles that could only have been possible from inside their home. Jack said, trembling, "This man, he's been inside our house. He's been watching us all the time." Just then, a soft voice came from behind. "You're right, Jack." Ryan was standing at the door. His smile was the same chilling and confident grin. "Did you think I was bothering you from prison? In reality, I was always close by. My friends, my pawns, they've been keeping an eye on you." Jack aimed his gun angrily. "Your game is over, Ryan." But before Jack could fire, Ryan pressed a button and red lights for explosives flickered inside the cabin. "You two have caused me a lot of trouble, but now this game is about to end." Ryan laughed and started running out. Jack and Liam immediately called Angela, "Get out of the house now!" Jack and Liam somehow made it out, and a loud explosion followed from behind. The cabin turned into a ball of fire. Ryan had escaped. Jack found Angela at a safe spot by the side of the road. Her hands were trembling. "Jack, what happened? Is he dead?" Jack shook his head. "No. He's still alive. And I'm sure this wasn't his last move." For the next few weeks, Jack, Angela, and Liam worked with the police to search for Ryan, but he was nowhere to be found. A few months later, Jack and Angela chose a new city. They even changed their names so no one would recognize them. They tried to rebuild their life in a small house. But one evening, while Angela was watering the flowers in the garden, an envelope fell near her feet. She picked it up with trembling hands. Inside there was only one line written, "You think you've escaped from me? I will always be close to you." Angela slowly raised her eyes and saw a shadow at the corner of the garden. The shadow slowly disappeared into the darkness. Jack, who was sitting inside, stood up as he saw Angela running towards him. "What happened?" Angela handed him the envelope with trembling hands. Jack looked at the envelope, then toward the garden. His eyes held the same old fear and unease. Is this the end? Or is Ryan's shadow still following them? Will Jack and Angela ever be free from this terror? Or is this game still going on? Jack shakily opened the envelope and read the words again. "You think you've escaped from me? I will always be close to you." His hands turned cold, and his heartbeat quickened. Angela, still in shock, placed her hand on Jack's shoulder and whispered, "Jack, will we ever be free of this man?" Jack took a deep breath, controlling his voice, and said, "No, Angela. This time we won't run. This time we will end this story once and for all." That night, Jack called Liam. "Liam, we need to end Ryan's game. We need to figure out how he's tracking us." Liam immediately called Jack and Angela to a safe location. Liam thoroughly checked Jack's phone, laptop, and the home's internet system. After some time, he found a major clue. "Jack, it's all being tracked through your old house's network. Someone planted a tracking device in your internet network, and this device is still connected to your old home." Jack clenched his fist in anger. "That means Ryan is tracking us through technological means, and the device is still active. We need to go back to that house." Angela said fearfully, "Jack, will it be safe? What if he's waiting for us there?" Jack held her hand and said, "We have to take this risk. This is our last chance." In the darkness of the night, Jack, Angela, and Liam arrived at their old house. The house was now abandoned, with broken windows and dust everywhere. Jack turned on his flashlight and slowly entered the house. Angela's heart was pounding, and every shadow seemed eerie. Liam immediately began checking the internet router with his equipment. After a while, he said, "Here it is. There's a miniature tracking device placed inside the router. Someone cleverly fitted inside." Jack removed the device and asked Liam, "Can you track its signal?" Liam worked on his laptop for a while and then said, "Yes. It's pointing to a location, but this location is outside the city, in an old factory area." Jack immediately said, "Let's go there now." The old factory area was desolate. Rusted machines, broken walls, and thick darkness surrounded them. Jack, Angela, and Liam slowly entered. They had flashlights and small guns. Suddenly, Jack noticed a faint light on the upper floor. "He's up there," Jack pointed. They slowly climbed the stairs, their breaths growing heavier with each step. As they reached the second floor, they heard a faint laugh coming from a room. It was the same laugh Jack would never forget. Ryan's laugh. Jack pushed open the door, and the sight before them was chilling. Ryan was sitting in a chair with a large screen in front of him displaying Jack and Angela's every move. Home, the lodge, the forest, everything. "Oh, Jack, you finally made it," Ryan said with a cold smile. "Did you think I'd let you go so easily?" Jack aimed his gun in anger. "Your game is over, Ryan. You're not going to scare anyone anymore." But Ryan's smile only grew wider. "Oh, Jack, you're forgetting again that I'm not alone here." Suddenly, several masked men entered the room. They were armed. Liam immediately fired and took one man down. Gunfire erupted. Jack and Liam took down several attackers, but their numbers kept increasing. Meanwhile, Angela gathered her courage and picked up a steel pipe. Sneaking up behind Ryan, she struck Ryan hard on the head, knocking him to the ground. "Jack, hurry!" Angela screamed. Jack grabbed Ryan's gun and aimed it at his chest. "Now your game is really over, Ryan." Ryan laughed and said, "Jack, did you really think you won? Even if I die, my network will live on. You'll never escape me." Jack pulled the trigger. The bullet fired, and Ryan's body fell to the ground. His eyes remained wide open. The police had arrived at the factory. All the attackers were arrested, and Ryan's operation was completely shut down. The police reported that Ryan had a large network operating through technology and blackmailing. A few weeks later, Jack and Angela were sitting in their new home. Sunlight was streaming through the window. They both wore faint smiles, but the marks of past terror still lingered in their eyes. "Is it really over, Jack?" Angela asked. Jack sighed deeply and said, "Yes, Angela, it's truly over." The room was peaceful, a calm that they hadn't felt in years. But somewhere far away, pictures of Jack and Angela were loading on a computer screen. The golden rays of the sun peeked through the window of Jack and Angela's new home. After months, they had seen a peaceful morning. Jack was sitting on the balcony drinking coffee, while Angela was watering the flowers in the nearby garden. Everything seemed normal, but this peace was an illusion, the calm before a storm. That afternoon, Jack received a message from an unknown number on his phone. "Miss me, Jack? The game isn't over." Jack almost dropped the phone. His face turned pale. He immediately called Angela over and showed her the message. How is this possible, Jack?" "Ryan is dead." Angela's voice trembled. Jack composed himself and said, "Someone else is doing this, Angela. Someone who is running Ryan's network. We need to contact Liam immediately." Liam arrived at their house quickly. He analyzed the message and found that it was sent from a high-profile server, almost impossible to trace. "This server is active on the dark web, Jack. And this is the work of professionals. That means Ryan's network is still running and someone is operating it." Liam delivered another shock to Jack and Angela. "The strangest thing is that suspicious networks have activated around your house again. Someone is watching your every move." Jack's anger flared. "Who are these people? How long will they keep tormenting us?" Liam said, "We need to strike directly at the enemy's base. But it won't be easy." Liam came up with a plan. He tried to access the server through the dark web where the message had been sent. After hours of work, Liam found a location: Titan Warehouse, located in a desolate area outside the city. Jack immediately decided, "We're going there. It's time to end this game." Jack, Angela, and Liam arrived at the Titan Warehouse in their car during the night. The place was deserted. Some guards were patrolling outside. Liam used his equipment from a distance to hack into the warehouse's security system. "I've disabled the alarm system, but we need to move fast," Liam whispered. The three of them entered the warehouse. The scene inside was chilling. A large screen was displaying videos of Jack and Angela, footage from their home, garden, and even their bedroom. How is this possible?" Angela's voice trembled. Just then, a voice echoed, "You finally made it, Jack. I thought you'd give up, but you proved me wrong." A man emerged from a dark corner. He was tall, muscular, and looked deadly. His voice was cold and controlled. "My name is Adrian, and I am Ryan's successor. He handed me this game." Jack, aiming his gun in anger, said, "This game ends here, Adrian." Adrian smiled. "Do you really think so? You people are always in my camera's sight. I watch you every moment, every breath, every step." Then Adrian pressed a button, and red lights filled the building. Guards and armed men surrounded them from all sides. Jack, Liam, and Angela took cover as a barrage of bullets started. Jack dropped one of the guards and advanced toward Adrian. Liam tried to hack the system in order to shut down the entire network. "I need 5 minutes, Jack!" Liam shouted. Angela, hiding behind a table, was suddenly surrounded by a group of guards, but she grabbed a nearby metal rod and struck one of them. Jack rushed to her aid and they managed to secure themselves. Meanwhile, Adrian tried to escape through a back door, but Jack stopped him. A brutal fight broke out between the two. Adrian was incredibly strong and knocked Jack down, but Jack gathered his last bit of strength, threw Adrian's gun away, and slammed him to the ground. Just then, Liam shouted, "The network is down! Everything is shut down." But Adrian laughed. "Jack, you can't change anything. This network isn't run by just me. Many others are involved. It will never end." Jack aimed his gun at Adrian's neck and said, "Your game is over." And he pulled the trigger. Police and special forces arrived at the scene. Adrian's network was dismantled. His servers and technical systems were completely destroyed. A few days later, Jack and Angela were sitting in a small cottage by the sea. The sun was setting, and they held hands. "Is it really over, Jack?" Angela asked. Jack looked into her eyes and said, "Yes, Angela. It's really over now." With the sound of the waves, the sun slowly sank into the sea. But somewhere far away, words were being typed on a computer screen in a locked room. By the sea, the soft breeze was brushing against Jack and Angela's faces. The sun was on the verge of setting, and a faint smile appeared on their faces. But Jack still felt uneasy. Even after ending Adrian, he felt like this story wasn't over yet. That night, while Angela slept soundly, Jack went for a walk by the sea. In the darkness, with the sound of the waves, a storm of anger and vengeance was rising within him. How many more will come? How many more enemies? I can't keep seeing my loved ones in danger. Suddenly, Jack's phone vibrated. A message flashed on the screen. "You need strength to fight alone, Jack. You need the real power to end this game." Jack paused. He read the message carefully. A few seconds later, a link to a location came. Without thinking, Jack traced the location and decided to go there first thing in the morning. The location led him to a remote area, to an underground bunker. An elderly man was waiting for him. "You're Jack, right?" the man asked. "You know me?" Jack replied, surprised. "Yes, I know you. I'm Gregory. I train those who are ready to fight this dark world, those who want to end it." Gregory led Jack into the bunker. Inside there were modern weapons, technology, and a strict training setup. "If you truly want to end this game, you first have to prepare yourself," Jack agreed without hesitation. For the next few weeks, Gregory and his team trained Jack hard. He learned how to handle modern weapons, mastered hand-to-hand combat, and learned the art of tracking enemies through technology. After each training session, Jack's determination grew. His muscles became stronger, his moves more precise, and his confidence unshakable. On the last day of training, Gregory gave Jack a special device. "This is your greatest strength. It will help you track and destroy enemy networks. Now go, Jack, and end this story once and for all." Jack sent Angela a message. "I'll be gone for a few days. This is the final battle. After this, everything will end." Angela replied, "Be careful, Jack. I'll be waiting for your return." Jack began tracing the enemy's network with his new weapon, device, and headset. Slowly, he pinpointed the locations where the remaining operatives of Ryan's network were hiding. The first location was an old warehouse. Jack infiltrated alone. In the darkness, he could hear the enemy's voices. He silently took out the guards one by one. Jack was no longer the same man. His moves were precise, and his aim was deadly. There he found a laptop with several other location coordinates saved. The second location was a luxury villa. Jack entered through the roof, defeating the enemies with precision. One by one, all the operatives fell. There was no fear in Jack's eyes anymore. With every location taken down, Jack grew stronger. Eventually, Jack discovered the true successor to Ryan. His name was Marco, Ryan's closest associate. Marco was hiding in a secret underground bunker surrounded by state-of-the-art security systems. Jack arrived and immediately entered. Alarms went off, gunfire started, but Jack had become a machine. He took down enemy after enemy. Finally, he stood face to face with Marco. "So you're Jack, the one who killed Ryan, killed Adrian, and now found his way to me, but this will be your last step," Marco said. Marco raised his gun, but Jack was faster. He knocked Marco down and put a knife to his throat. "Your game is over, Marco. I've destroyed all the locations of your network. Your people are no longer with you." Marco laughed and said, "But Jack, you've forgotten one thing. This network will never end. Someone else will take over," Jack replied. "But not you." And he ended Marco's life. After Marco's death, Jack completely destroyed his systems. All the servers were burned to the ground. The police arrested the remaining criminals. Jack returned to Angela. As soon as Angela saw him, she hugged him. "It's over, Angela. It's really over." The waves were calm, the sunlight shining on their faces. Jack and Angela looked at each other, and for the first time it felt like they were truly safe. Time passed, and gradually Jack and Angela's life started returning to normal. They did their best to leave behind the old fears and terrifying memories. In their small house by the sea, peace and serenity resided. A few months later, Angela gave Jack the news she was going to be a mother. Tears filled Jack's eyes. After so much darkness, fear, and struggle, this news was like a new light for them. Jack hugged Angela and said, "Our journey will take a new beginning from here." Sometime later, the sound of a baby's cries filled their home. Their son, Lucas, was the most beautiful gift in their lives. Jack became a responsible and loving father, while Angela became a nurturing and strong mother. Years went by. Jack started his own small technology company, and Angela focused on her gardening and small business. Their family grew slowly. A few years later, they had a daughter, whom they named Sophia. Now their house echoed with the laughter of children, and flowers bloomed in their garden. Jack often took his children to the seaside and taught them how to fight fear in life and how important family truly is. At night, when the children were asleep, Jack and Angela often sat on the balcony, watching the waves and smiling, holding each other's hands. "Jack, how did we manage all of this?" Angela asked with a slight smile. Jack looked at her and said, "Because we never gave up, Angela. We faced every difficulty together and won every battle together." The stars were shining in the sky, and the waves gently touched the shore. Their home was no less than a palace now, and their life was completely filled with happiness. This is where the story ends. Peace, serenity, and a new light.